access to these if I need them. Okay. You good, Caters?
I'm good.
Hello and welcome to History on the Dark Side. Today I have a very special guest host. It's my daughter, Cadence Melodance Andrus.
Hi.
That's not a real name. And Katie, you are on the first video episode. So hello, YouTube. We're new here.
Hi, YouTube.
As we started thinking about how to do the podcast, I went with this big conglomeration of other teachers, and that was fun for stuff that we did in school. And then I decided to make it really serious, do the deep dive, and just be serious. And I decided that's not very fun. And I want to do the podcast. I do love history, but I wanted it to be fun too. And you know what? You know what's fun for me, Katie?
Me.
Wow.
I'm pretty fun.
I was going to say the family, but yes, you are pretty fun. So yes, thank you. Now, our lovely viewers and listeners probably don't know that you recently had a little busy weekend. What were you up to, dear?
I competed in the speech and debate national qualifying tournament.
Oh, that sounds very nerdy, very nerdy. Now, our whole family's done speech and debate, so she's just one of many. However, it turns out she's the best of many. So tell us how you did.
I was undefeated and qualified to nationals.
Okay. Undefeated in which style of debate?
Public forum.
Okay, so that's not real debate, you keeping score at home, but it's debate light, and she still dominated. Good job.
Well, and I'm still the first in our family to qualify to nationals, so.
Well, I mean, you did go last year in Congress too, so.
Yeah. Don't mind me.
Anyways, the only reason I even bring that up is because when I debated 1980, like 7, 8, and 9, something like that, many years ago, every debate, especially in policy, there was only 2 debates back then, ended because someone was going to cause a nuclear war or someone was being just like the Nazis.
Oh yeah, as you can really see it if you get into Lincoln Douglas debate too. Everyone gets compared to Hitler. Everyone.
There you go. So in 20 or 30 or more years of debate in high school, we haven't gotten past, oh, you're just as bad as Hitler.
I mean, who else is going to keep the legends alive?
Keep the legends alive?
It may be a poor word choice, but...
So one thing that matters to me in history is, since everybody talks about Hitler, and we see it all the time, every time anybody ever said anything about the Trump impeachment, version 1 or 2, we were there for both. We weren't there, but he's always Hitler, and his people are always jackbooted thugs. And when Antifa and our Black Lives Matter or anybody else was protesting or rioting throughout the summer, they were always just like Hitler and the Nazis. Everybody's always the Nazis. So one thing I wanted to do is talk about what really happened with the Nazis. They get bantered about all the time, and most people who use this kind of visualization or use this kind of talk about what the Nazis were, they weren't there, and they haven't really studied much. They just know that Nazis is kind of the ultimate trigger word for something really bad or evil. Sound fair?
Yeah.
I mean, you kids today, what do you know about Nazis?
That they were really bad and evil.
There's my point. So when we talk about where things began with the Nazis, one thing that really kind of matters most is Hitler talked about having the Third Reich, the third 1,000 years of German excellence. He meant that. Like, we're in America.
Yeah.
We don't have 1,000 years of memory. Our country is like, what, 250? We're 2 something. We're a little baby country. So when you get to Europe, or heaven forbid you talk China, once you get outside of America, there's places that actually have really long histories. I guess there were some people in America that had 1,000-year histories.
But for America as a nation, definitely not.
Right. Those would be the native tribes that we just kind of steamrolled and buried their history.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. And it was unwritten history for the most part, so that made it weird too. But in Germany, they've got this idea of Volk. It's spelled more like Volk. So if I say Volk, what do you think of, Katie Bell?
A Volkswagen.
Yep, there you go. Everybody can think of the Volkswagen. And if you're my generation, you think of the Beetle. If you're your generation, maybe think of a, I don't know, Jetta or something. I don't know.
Think of a van.
Okay.
Like the hippie 70s van.
All right, so that's fair. That vehicle, you know, the Volkswagen, is the people's wagon, the people's vehicle. But this idea of Volk goes not just meaning people in the way we would think of it, like a crowd, or even like a nationality. Like I'm rah rah, go Team America. I'm all for it, right? America, yeah, we're great. Glad I'm American. But this idea of Volk has a very kind of militaristic aspect to it. If you look at the definition, it's actually kind of a big group like you're preparing for a battle or a war or something. Now, I don't know what you know about ancient Germanic military history.
Literally nothing.
Okay, but you probably do and you just don't know it, okay? When Rome fell, and it was all of the Vandals and the Visigoths and all these barbarians at the gate, right?
Yeah.
So outside of the Huns who came through and wiped out everybody, all those other groups of people are basically Germanic tribes that had come down from the north and just raised holy terror. Like when Caesar and the other great leaders in Rome were getting powerful, they made it into England, they make it through France. They kind of don't make it all the way up into what is modern day Germany because those people are just done crazy. They fight better and they're able to withstand this Roman occupation and this Roman domination that most of the rest of Europe fell under. So there's this really proud history that the Germanic people can look back to. And it's real history. At the time Hitler comes to power, Mussolini, he's already come to power in Italy before that. Now, Italy can look back to some pretty awesome previous times too, right?
Yeah.
Because, Rome, thank you. And Mussolini's trying to play on that and get people in Italy to look at, hey, we're this people still. Whatever happened and along the way, the last couple thousand years got a little sideways, but that's us. At our heart, at our core, we're those people. And one of the things Hitler does when he comes to power is he really embraces this concept of Volk, of looking back in German history, but it's not something he created. Like this is going on around him. He just jumps on it and is like, yes, thank you very much, Volk rocks, which sounds like a cool rock band might be playing at the local auditorium soon. I don't know, Volk rock! Anyway, if you like the German death metal music, I imagine there probably is a band. They'll probably sue me for bringing up their name on the air, or they'll pay me. Either way, I guess I'll find out. So as they go into this concept of Volk, of looking backwards, of having this proud, successful, militaristic history, they can not only look back, but they can look ahead and imagine what hundreds of years or thousands of years in the future might be. Like there's something about having thousands of years of history enables you to look forward in a way that maybe we can't do here in America. Like if I'm gonna look into my future American crystal ball, if I want to look 2 years, can you get me there? 2 years.
I mean,
what's gonna happen in America in 2 years? Go.
We'll probably have the strongest military still.
Yeah, we're like that. Thank you.
There will be some sort of economics going on. Could be either a crash or a rise. Either way, we'll survive.
Okay.
It's kind of all I got.
All right.
I mean, that's just what our history has been.
There'll probably be some Super Bowls still. We'll, carry on, like you say. But now, if we're going to project that out, give me 100 years in the future in America.
A whole lot can change in 100 years.
I mean, I feel like we get to the point where we go, well, if we're going to look ahead 100 years, are we even still here? Does it still look at all like it does politically? Are we 50 states? Has that all changed? Has the world changed? Are we power? Is China now the superpower and we're some second or third tier type person? I mean, we've been on top for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue probably as early as maybe the Spanish-American War,
Yeah.
when we took over the Philippines and all that. But certainly by the end of World War I, we're the big dog. And we have stayed up there ever since. But man, it's a little different. There's a lot of people closing in on us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to look forward because we don't have hundreds and hundreds of years of the past to judge that on.
To project it.
Right. But in Germany, you do. You do. You've got that. You've got long-standing traditions. You've got symbolism. You've got, the Norse gods and Norse mythology. You've got a lot of things that you can hearken back to. That, I mean, we can go back to like 1776. That's what we got. We got the Sons of Liberty dumping the tea, and that's cool. That's fun.
A few couple massacres, but no.
And we try and play those down.
Yeah.
Like,
not necessarily proud of those.
hopefully not, but yeah. So here's this German people, and we've got to talk about what is the world Hitler comes to power in. So he's preaching, hey, we used to be the bomb, and we used to be the superpower, and we can be again. Where do you feel like that becomes most appealing to a country?
I mean, I feel like when you're, especially in Hitler's position where he's trying to come to power, in this instance, like in order for him to have followers, he has to appeal to them in some way. And probably the most obvious way is through fear, but he has to find a way to instill fear in each of those people, which is a pretty broad spectrum.
Okay, and we often think of Hitler as this fear monger, right?
But at the same time, he was a really efficient recruiter.
Well, he inspired people. And he didn't inspire them because he told them anything new or different. He told them stuff that they were hearing all around them in a little more forceful, a little more dramatic way, which is very typical of, if we had somebody who was giving a speech in politics and was just up and down and screaming. And I mean, Hitler's all over the place. It looks a little foreign to us. It's like a little too much, like what's this guy doing? But that's very appealing to kind of their tradition, this demonstrative way of speaking. But he's harnessing ideas that are already all around him. One thing about Hitler, okay, he does not create a lot of original thought. He just doesn't. But what he's good at is being a spokesman for things that are already out there, and maybe the spokesmen that exist aren't that great. But before anybody hates the Jews or hates anything else, or even before they hate France, he finds this kernel of let's love Germany. Not the one we're in now, because post-World War I Germany sucks.
Little rough.
Like the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I basically guaranteed World War II. Now, everybody in Germany is just like, oh, we did not even lose the war. When the war ends, they're still on foreign soil. The war hasn't even come to Germany. And so it seems like that would be easy to think about, oh, well, we didn't lose. Nothing happened here. Like for your generation, mine too, maybe. Is it hard to imagine that we, America, lost the Vietnam War?
Yeah, especially seeing our hegemony right now with like our military. The concept of losing a war is so foreign. It's so very foreign. And I've even heard many people in my generation talk about the Vietnam War and get it wrong. And they talk about, how we win. I'm like, no, wait, that was a war that we most definitely lost.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
Just so absolutely foreign because of how strong we are now.
And, for thousands of years, you lose a war when the enemy occupies you. They take you over. You're clearly the loser at that point. But here we have Germany that's done all the fighting in France, a little bit in Russia, but they've been all up and down France. It sucks for France. The death tolls are staggering. And then as the war comes to more of a conclusion, as the Americans come on board, Germany's bled out. They've thrown all the soldiers they can at this thing. And even with Russia having their revolution and bailing on the war and moving everybody from the east to the west, there's not enough. They can't sustain victory because in that style of war, it's really just a meat grinder. Whoever's got the most people is going to win. And here comes the Americans, and that tips the balance, and they're retreating, and they're getting pushed back across France. And, you know, the leaders realize we're done. They can keep sending people. We can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So let's call it. Because if we call it now, while we're still out there, it's going to be better than if we wait until they're in Berlin. Nobody wants that. And that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they have this negotiation for, okay, we're going to end the war. And it doesn't work out for them. Because we're there with Woodrow Wilson, who is not my favorite president. He's a wee little bit of a racist and way too out of my comfort level and a lot of social ideas. But he's there saying, hey, let's have a peace without casting blame. Like, the whole world was nuts. They were all excited and happy to have this war. Everybody was cheering and yes, we're going to go and we're going to win and it's going to be great. And it wasn't great. It was terrible.
I mean, it's a war. Well, part of it is great.
It was one of the worst ones ever because you're just lining up people and they're killing each other because the weapons are so much more advanced than defensive or tactical things. Until tanks and airplanes, it's really just a meat grinder.
And it is a world war and everyone was involved in it. So
Right.
It's not really like blame can be cast to any one country because guess what? Everyone participated.
Great, see? Thinking like yours prevents Nazis. Good job, Katie. However, that's not the thinking that won over the day in France, especially. France is really bitter. They should be. Most of that bleeding happened on their soil. 1 in 7 Frenchmen died. 1 in 7.
It's a pretty big number.
It's basically, and they've got decent sized families over there. So basically everybody lost somebody in that war. Germany lost a whole generation of people too. They lost a lot. And so did all, the other England and the other countries involved. It's bad all the way around. But France is super mad because war has always meant, well, we win, then we get it back, and the soldiers go, and then we get them back. Do you want to just walk over there and the light will come back on? That's one of the fun parts of
Sorry, YouTube. There
auto
we go.
lights. Yeah, that was great.
We're back.
And so France is so mad, and they just say, hey, Germany's got to pay for this war. They're going to lose a bunch of their land. They're going to lose all their military. They're going to have to pay gazillions of dollars. And so when you have a bill for a gazillion dollars, there's a couple ways you can try and get out of debt. What do you think, Katie? I have a bill for a gazillion dollars and I'm a country. What can I do?
Industrial revolutions.
Okay.
Production and exports.
We could build our way out. That would have been a novel approach. It would have been difficult, but that's not where Germany went, which is a little shocking. They're one of the better industrializing mindset and physical countries on earth historically, but this is just crazy, right? Like France says, you got to pay this debt in Reichsmarks. You owe us blank amount of your dollars. Okay? So I'm Germany, I want the loophole. What do I do?
Well, if it's of my money and
I'm a country.
My money's different than your money,
Yeah.
then I'm totally going to cheat that out and be like, I paid you however much of my money, even if it's only $2.
No, you're just the opposite. They just printed more money. They're like, oh, we owe you 50 trillion Reichsmarks.
Oh, okay. The
Sweet.
$50 trillion.
Start the presses. Chop down some trees.
Put
Get the
everyone
print.
in poverty.
Totally. Super inflation, hyperinflation. The stuff going on in Venezuela.
With 1,000,000% inflation.
Yeah, that's what happens. People are literally, and there's photos and some old history books, people are wheelbarrowing money to the store to buy a loaf of bread because it costs like, who knows, 100,000 Reichsmarks. Now that's great if you're trying to pay off the debt. Here's all your money, but you totally destroyed your own population. Now this is all pre-Hitler. Hitler was in the war. He didn't play any grand part. He comes back and he's living in this general kind of atmosphere. I don't know if it's any better or worse for him. He's Austrian, so he bounces around, Germanic people, which I guess is another part of this whole Volk idea. Like, When we think of American people, you can follow the trail a couple places. England, France, or Native Americans. That's really it, right?
Maybe a little bit of Spanish, but
And if you're going to follow England or France or Spain, you can only do that from like 1495 on. Maybe there's some Vikings before that up in Newfoundland. So the trail's kind of different. But there's these Germanic people that have similar customs, similar religions, similar languages, all around that region of Europe. Germany is one of the last countries to unify. And the day they did, they're probably the strongest country in Europe. Europe spent its entire existence trying to fight this from happening, keep them from unifying. Who did the English hire to help them in the Revolutionary War against the wannabe Americans?
they hired German.
Yeah, the Hessians are all German.
Yeah, they hired German like ambassadors and stuff to just go kill everybody.
Right. So they've got this military tradition, and it's proud. And all over Europe and other places, they're hiring Germanic groups from one region or another. But when you hire them out to do your bidding, not only does it help you as another country, but it keeps them from getting together. So there's been this big double layer of things going on. Now, the other big area besides like the fall of Rome thing that Germany can look back on, their second, 1,000 years, the Second Reich, is the Holy Roman Empire. So after the fall of Rome, and then we get into the Dark Ages, and as we're coming out of that, you've got this kind of secondary burst of the Roman Empire as a Christian empire, Charlemagne, all that kind of thing, right? That's primarily Germanic people too. So they've got a couple cool things to look back on. And now Hitler's like, we need to look ahead. And we need to look ahead for 1,000 years. People buy that. They are willing to take that long-term view. How does that change your worldview if you're looking that far in advance?
It changes it a lot, because like in 1,000 years, I'm not even living there for that world that I'm trying to change right now.
Right.
So I can imagine what it looks like, and I can try to, get it there, but I'll never even know if it does.
But let's take it back. How old are you?
I'm 17.
She's 17. I know she was born in February. Don't ask me the day. Anyway, I asked her when the kids' birthdays are. It's a little sad. So you want to have a family someday, right?
Yeah.
You want to have kids?
Yeah.
Grandkids maybe someday?
Yeah, I love little kids.
Are there things you're willing to do differently now?
Oh, for
because
sure.
you think it might have an impact on your future kids or grandkids?
Oh, for sure. Just even if it's something as simple as like changing the language that I use, so that way future children and grandchildren don't copy that language or.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's my point. If you're going to take a long view of your country, whether it's Germany, America, or anything else, you're going to make some different sacrifices. You're going to take some different actions and choices, and you would give away some of what might be more comfortable for you now so that those future generations could do a little better, right?
Yeah.
As a parent, when you're growing up, when you're a little kid, there's stuff me and mom did that, it would have been easier for us to just go out to eat every night and just go to the movies every night. But we're trying to think long term, how are we going to help you kids someday? And in a lot of ways, we didn't do too well. Get a good scholarship. You're pretty smart. Keep that debate up, because I'm a broke history teacher. Yeah, if you want to be rich, don't teach history, kids. But you make some sacrifices, and you plan for this long term. So this is the idea that Hitler finds himself in, and that the greater German people really embrace. Hey, our world around us sucks. Look at it. It absolutely sucks. You're telling me that we could be better now, a little bit. We can make some changes, but we can make it so much better for these future generations if we get together and work on these things. The reason this matters is because when we talk about, and this is mostly about, Nazi medicine. When we talk about people in the medical field, there's going to be this weird switch, okay? When we talk about the Hippocratic Oath, right?
Yeah.
Do no harm. That's the summary Don't do anything to hurt anybody. Help those that you can. If you have a tangible right in front of you view of that, that's going to be a lot different than if you view your country, your nation, as one organism. And you want to do what's best for that country, for that future, for that Volk. 100, 500, 1,000 years from now, what am I going to do within my profession to do no harm to what the future is?
Which is really kind of an interesting concept, because throughout this whole, you've been talking about like pride and like how they've had a proud history. And when you're in that moment and you have a leader preaching to you saying, hey, guess what? Things suck right now, but in 1,000 years with our sacrifice, they'll be pretty dang good. And you have this proud history to back you up, and you're sitting there thinking, I can do something to make them better.
Yeah.
And obviously, when that better does happen, you're going to be pretty proud of it. And you'll be proud of yourself too, because you'll know that you contributed to it. You did that. And that's what's appealing to the people.
Yeah. So even if your personal home life doesn't get better, your personal situation doesn't improve, you feel like you contributed to this future, that's real. We see that in religious circles all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're going to do this or that for church, whatever religion you are, you make these kind of sacrifices all the time because you're looking for a future, whether on earth or in whatever your version of heaven is, that makes it better, that makes it worth it.
And you see it in like even war all the time. People will literally give their life because even though it makes their situation bad, they're looking to the future to try and help this greater good.
And I think there's a little bit of that in Germany too, because it's a very Catholic and Lutheran society. Those are your predominant religions. Definitely Christian across the board. Okay? And you're used to hearing about, well, we're going to make some sacrifices, get our reward later on for the sacrifices we make now, different Bible verses that are going to
help shape
that. It's very easy to apply that to right now in front of me political situation. We've taken a theoretical or a religious model and applied it to our world. Now this gets dangerous, and we're going to see this a ton when we get to this next topic here, all right? And by golly, we're just cruising right along. So having this understanding of Volk is important in order to talk about eugenics.
Yes.
Okay, do you have a basic concept of what eugenics is?
Yeah, eugenics it's kind of like the start of racism, basically. That one, based off of like gene codes and things like that, that one race is superior than another.
Okay, so that's where it kind of ends up, right? But there's no gene code really to think about back then. We're not there yet. But there are definitely some implications. If we study human beings and we can determine by physical characteristics that some people are going to be better, stronger, faster, or on the flip side, weaker, more likely to fail, or more of a burden on society. If we can figure that out and quantify it, this is where life gets scary, because that means we can take some pretty wild ethical jumps to try and minimize or maximize, depending on which way you want to look at it. And eugenics is always two things. It's this positive eugenics. We want to selectively breeding, like with the agriculture or with animals. That's positive eugenics in a way. We want to get the best product we can, so we're going to have these people get together. We're going to have these animals get together. We want the blue ribbon winners from the fair to have offspring because they're more likely to be good, right? We still see this today in like horse racing. Hey, what are the bloodlines in this horse? Okay, when you apply that to people,
that's when it can get really scary.
It gets really sketchy really quick. Now, we see a ton of this, especially, Hitler and the Nazis are going to take this kind of idea and want to apply that to Jews. They're going to want to apply that to the Roma, which is, the gypsies. They're going to want to apply that to the Russians, the Asians, anybody who's not them. They want to be able to show, oh, you're not. We can prove it. We can qualify and quantify it, and maybe there's something to do about it. But this whole concept of eugenics, It's science. We know now it's bad science. But in the 1900s, 1920s, all the way up until the early 1930s, we don't really have this understanding that it's bad science. Okay? We're chasing it. Like there was a whole time in the world where when we thought about what volcanoes came from and everything, nobody knew that there was plate tectonics. And you had these plates of earth going over and near and sliding past each other. There was no plate tectonic theory 150 years ago. It wasn't there. So your explanations for things were weird. It was still science. It was based on observation, the best they could, but it wasn't right. And so if you have bad inputs, what are you going to have?
You're going to have bad outcomes.
Garbage in, garbage out. So we've got this style of study. Let's see what we can find out from people. It's kind of, we're going to take this theories of Darwin, okay, Darwinism,
Yeah,
evolution, selective breeding, all that, and let's apply it to humans. And if you do that in a vacuum, we're just going to apply it and let the science take us where it will, okay? In our day, we hear this all the time, right? Follow the science. Yeah. We live in COVID, and every politician on either side, we're going to follow the science. That's a great idea when science is right. And it's scary when science is wrong. And this is one that turned out to be wrong. But guess where it started and really took hold and was most studied?
Where's that?
You gotta guess. I'll give you a hint.
In America.
Yes. Yes. The study of eugenics, it kind of starts in maybe like Italy and Europe, but America jumps on this. And if you think about it, you can imagine why this would mean a lot in America. 1920s America. What possible application could eugenics have that would matter to a certain geographical group of people?
I feel like I should definitely know this.
How might this science be applied in the South?
Oh, this science could be really easily applied to the South because guess what? We have this race of people that's so much better at working on these like plantations and things like that to make us money. So
there you go.
Let's make us some money.
There you go. There's huge interest in eugenics in America because there's this huge racial element. Like the South had to give up that slavery was bad, but they're still living in this Jim Crow era, hardcore. And it's not just the South, people in the Midwest and Indiana and Kansas. I mean, this is very common that the thought that, black people are, they're people, but they're not like us. That's pretty common, unfortunately, in America. That's not limited to just the South, but the white people in the South who still control a great deal and still build up their own kind of society and self-worth by denigrating someone else. They love this. This could be great for them because now it's science. It's science.
People like the idea of science because at the time, science couldn't be wrong. If it was science, it was true.
Science is hot. It was the end thing. It's still kind of the end thing. There's nothing wrong with science. You just always want to withhold some judgment until you get to the ends. And sometimes you got to question where those ends might be. And we'll get into that in a lot more detail in some future episodes. But in America in 1920, I pulled this up just to make sure. I want to say it's 1924. Nope, it's 27. Okay. You know who Oliver Wendell Holmes is?
No.
Okay, Supreme Court Justice.
Okay.
He's the guy that said you can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Yeah.
So he explained the First Amendment through something we've all heard ever since. So pretty smart guy, right?
Yeah.
In some ways. In Virginia, they had us shocking, right? Virginia. The South, I wonder. Now, these eugenic laws are in places other than the South, but they have one there that they're not applying racially per se, but they are applying to people with mental disorders. Now, our understanding of mental disorders in the 1920s is terrible.
So bad.
There's no pharmaceutical way to deal with that. You don't have the drugs. And even psychology and psychiatry are kind of in their infancy. They're still developing. And if you are not normal, you're hosed. It's bad.
Ah.
So they have someone there who becomes pregnant. Okay? Now, it is rumored that her mother was a loose-moraled woman who was not smart or educated, and grandma was too. So this is great, right? If this is your reputation, that your people in your bloodline for 2 or 3 generations are loose-moraled and promiscuous and seem to get pregnant, which I always kind of feel about this with the science. I think science by then knew it took 2, right? Like, you didn't just wake up and decide I'm going to be pregnant today. It took some help. Anyway, they had laws so that people could be sterilized by force. Okay, and remember, we're talking about an operation in the 1920s that's probably, I mean, if you get your tubes tied today or a vasectomy today, that's probably a pretty typical, easy, low-risk surgery. Is there any of those surgeries that are low risk in the 1920s? Maybe
No.
not. Okay. But the point is, you didn't even get a choice. You're not convicted of a crime, and this is your punishment. You're in an asylum or you're deemed unfit. And the killer is that there's a category called feeble-mindedness, which, are you kidding me?
Hold on.
That won't work. You have to walk
No,
over there.
I have to walk over.
I'm positive you were going to throw something.
I was going to throw something.
Been there, tried that. We're going to have to work on that in future casts. So, feeble-mindedness just encompasses whatever you want. If you can get enough people to say, yeah, this person who is slow or who didn't graduate high school for whatever reason, or who I don't like, or who I don't want to be part of my family, the crotchety old grandma that lives in the back room, whatever. Like, you could be considered feeble-minded. And with a label like that, it's not going to affect grandma. But if you're a young person of child-rearing age and you're constituted as feeble-minded, they can sterilize you. And so some advocates for people's rights are waiting. They're trying to find the perfect person to have this case with. And they finally do. This is Buck. The case is Buck versus Bell. And she is this person who has these, mom and grandma were apparently loose-moraled women, allegedly. Now, it turns out that the reason that Buck got pregnant was a rape by, I think, someone in her family, actually. So I don't remember for sure who it was, but great, right? So now we're going to blame you, the victim, for being raped. And on top of all that, you're feeble-minded, and we're going to sterilize you so this never happens again.
And it's also in the 1920s, so operation is not going to go so well.
And we end up all the way to the Supreme Court, which is usually a good thing. But we know from civil rights law in the 1920s that wasn't always a good thing, right? And the quote by Oliver Wendell Holmes, who's so smart to say you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, is basically that as a society, 3 generations of imbeciles is enough.
Wow.
So how does that make you feel?
Not like he's not such a smart.
Yeah, if you
person.
could somehow demonstrate that this has been going on for a couple generations, it's okay to go ahead and sterilize her, because we wouldn't want that to continue. Okay? And this thought is that it's going to be an unfair burden on society. You're going to have kids, and we're going to have to take care of them. And not only that, they're going to be stupid kids too. They're going to be feeble-minded, or they're going to be blind, or they're going to have seizures, whatever these different illnesses, ailments, or categories are. You're going to have more of those, because that's how, breeding works. Your children have half of you, and they're no doubt going to get the bad half. So we're just going to sterilize you. And that was found to be okay in America in 1927. Right about the time Hitler is just starting to take control of the Nazi Party and really kind of build it up and make this thing go. How convenient. How convenient. Thoughts? Good job, America. Way to be first.
Yeah. I mean, only 3 generations before you just decide, okay, cool, cut off this bloodline. Like we know today through things like, gene code science and stuff like that, that 3 generations is not that long. Like that is obviously hereditary things are very easily passed through 3 generations, and you need a lot more time to be able to expel those.
Right.
And so when applying that to like Nazi Germany, you're trying to think of this fantasy world, like this utopia thousands of years in ahead that we're trying to help, but you don't have this important piece of information about eugenics to help play into that, hey, 3 generations isn't enough before you call the ball, then that utopia is not even going to exist. Like, everyone's just going to die. Like, everyone's going to have to get sterilized. Like, there will be nobody to create that utopia.
And the Nazis flip it. They flip this quote basically and say, you know what? We can have a Germanic people that's unencumbered by all of these maladies in 3 generations. If we just take out the bad parts, that's negative eugenics, prevent the bad, and try and do the good, in 3 generations, there won't be anybody living in asylums. There won't be anybody on the public dole. Think about that, right? Like, are there people on the public dole in America right now?
What do you mean by public dole?
That the government supports financially.
Of course, definitely.
Lots of them, right?
Yeah.
And we argue about how that should look, and political parties have a say in all that. But there's millions of people that are getting assistance from America, from the government. Okay?
And there's plenty of
What makes that work?
What do you mean?
Well, what do you need in order to help millions of people?
You need, like, support for those people. You have to actually you need money.
You need the money. You need the money. Now America's got it because we've got this giant economy and we borrow a lot, which is a whole nother program. But we have a big enough economy to sustain millions of people. And we try to, and we do. Whether you like it or not, it happens. Now let's think about Germany. Where are they at?
They're not sustaining their people. They're in utter and complete poverty because they just paid off this massive debt to France by printing more money. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to, ramp up and say, okay, to get us out of this, let's change, let's make our people perfect. Let's, bring that pride back. But
let's bring the pride back.
They don't.
But let's bring that bill down.
Yeah.
These people cost money. And the country didn't have any. So those programs, you could argue, are taking food off somebody's table. And that's exactly what they're going to argue. Hey, crazy Aunt Billy, who's in the asylum, because he exists, your kids are on a lesser school. They're eating lesser food. You're paying for that. Yeah. That's coming out of your pocket because that's how this works. When things are desperate, that feels a lot different than when things are really good.
For sure. Like, here, obviously, in our times now, we look at this and see, okay, yeah, that's not good. That's really, really bad to think about. But if you're in those shoes and you're sitting there and you're saying, hey, I can't even afford to get my kids some new shoes. They've had the same tattered ones for years and years and years. Yeah. We barely can afford to go, like you said, buy a loaf of bread. And there's these people that are seen as unfit or feeble-minded. And they're basically taking your money, or at least that's what it feels like.
Yep.
So that way you can't even provide for your own. It's frustrating. It's frustrating, and it definitely will feel a lot different.
So there's where that pride and that hope gets twisted, and you start mining the anger.
The anger and the greed.
The anger, the greed, the frustration. If you're a politician and you don't have to pay for any of these people, is your problem solved?
Yeah.
One of them, right? Okay, so this is the dynamic going on in Germany. This is not something that was invented by Hitler. There were eugenic laws already on the books in local principalities once he becomes power. And I'm going to say this in every episode, but Hitler's never the majority until he's in power and he can fake the results of elections. The Nazis are never a majority party, but they don't have a two-party system over there. There's lots of parties. So even as a large minority party, you get disproportional influence. That's how he came to power. But along those lines, doctors, nurses, people in the medical field joined the Nazi movement and party at a rate much higher than the general population.
And if you're there and you are the general population, you're not the doctors, lawyers, etc., and you have these people that are said to be in high-ranking positions, and they're also the ones telling you, yeah, we need to continue on with this. You're paying for all these people that are, they're not fit for society. They're messing us up. They're preventing us from getting to our future.
There you go.
Then, If my doctor tells me that I have a broken leg or I have cancer, I'm going to believe him. If my doctor tells me that somebody's not fit for society, then
I think my chair is too low. I
very...
feel like you're taller than me. One moment.
Wait, hold on. I'm okay with that.
Oh, I feel like a dad again.
But anyway, like when you get these people of high ranking positions following this party, following the eugenics, it's very, very easy to manipulate the general population, because that's what's really going on. Is all of this wasn't invented by Hitler, but he just manipulated it all.
Okay, and before it even gets to the general population in any way that matters, eugenics is science, medicine is science, and the links between the two are great. If we're going to selectively breed or stop breeding we don't want, that's a medical situation.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get a medical operation. You might try and find medical drugs or x-rays,
Mm-hmm.
other kind of things will pop up later on. So the linkage there is pretty high. Eugenics isn't disproven yet. And if you participate in these things, if you believe in eugenics and you participate in them, if you help to prevent that third generation of imbeciles, if you can contribute to that 3 generations to a perfect Germany, it's the Volk.
Yeah, it's that pride and that almost like just like arrogance too. Like, I did that.
Yeah.
I contributed to that.
I did something for our country's future. And this is kind of the dilemma. We have the doctors and the nurses and the medical staff that are going to quietly be really supportive of these eugenic programs. And one of the first laws that the Nazis do pass is a nationwide sterilization program based on the local laws that were already in effect. They just made it nationwide. And they don't have to twist anybody's arm to get doctors and nurses and medical staffs and hospitals to change their mind and start doing these things. They find very willing participants, because if my goal is to do no harm or to contribute to the health of the overall German body, that's the only change we made. I changed my Hippocratic oath from you as an individual to this greater whole nation. And which is more important? Well, if I'm the provider, I think the whole nation's more important.
Yeah, we gotta help this whole organism. Otherwise, each individual won't even be able to survive.
Right. I just last night was watching this thing on Everest and people that die up there. And there's a code basically. Hey, if you can't walk anymore, you get left. You get left, because if we try and save you on Everest,
then we're
going to die too. We can't carry you. We can't drag you. That's the exact same thought process that these doctors, nurses, the medical field is using when they combine eugenics and they match it up with Nazi ideology, and they're looking for this concept of Volk, of how can we make a future Germany that's going to be better regardless of economy. We're going to take out the drains. We're going to increase the mind power. We're going to get the hardest workers. We're going to do all these things. And all I have to do to make this wonderful world happen is help out with this operation of this person who's crazy.
I just have to sterilize you and you and you, and then I've done my part, and I have helped that society.
Yeah, you can go to bed feeling pretty good that you did your part today. That's the moral break. That's not anywhere near the gas chambers, right? This moral break and this commitment from the medical field to mesh with Nazi ideology, at this point through eugenics, it's already there.
It's kind of this political science of eugenics, because at this stage it's still kind of like a political science, since it's not developed enough. And then it's meshing with this medical science, and everyone's like, okay, hey, we're taking the two, we're combining them. We can see that they do correlate and they're matching. So then it must be true, right? If we have these two things that are both good on their own, and then we bring them together and they can help us provide for this organism, then that's what we need to be following.
And the last part of this is that they're going to do it quietly, okay?
Nobody needs to know.
I'm not going to make a big deal. I don't feel like I necessarily have to hide this or sneak around. I feel good about it. I feel okay with it. But, I don't want to get your emotional level all fired up because I'm looking down the road. And if you're looking at this emotional thing with your uncle, daughter,
You're looking
husband,
right here,
you're looking
not
right
out
there.
there.
And you know, I'm 1,000 years down the road. You're right here in front of you.
Yeah.
So I can forgive that. I know you're in this emotional moment, and that's okay. People do that. I'm gonna just help out in a way where
I'm gonna keep moving the society
Yeah.
forward while you're staying behind,
Mhm.
so they don't feel a need to advertise it. So that way they don't get even more people that are choosing to stay behind, at least in their eyes.
And I'll have more about this when I get to the episode, the next one, where it's actually on the sterilization. But they're going to have a board that's going to have to pick who's qualified for these sterilizations. And there's going to be a psychiatrist, and there's going to be a doctor, and there's going to be a lawyer who's more often than not a Nazi ideological lawyer. And it's crazy how they set up this 3-party panel to almost guarantee most people are going to qualify. It's kind of like when you see somebody in jail, in court, right? If they come out and they're in the orange jumpsuit and they got tattoos all over them, they're innocent until proven guilty, right? But in your brain, they're guilty. Why are they in? Look at them. Look at them.
If they look like they could be whatever bias you have against them, then you're going to have that bias against
If
them.
we really wanted to say innocent until proven guilty, we'd shave them up, clean them up, put them all in a tie, work with them to speak some proper, don't swear in court. We would do all this for them if we actually wanted to enforce innocent until proven guilty. We don't. Prosecutors love that. If I can parade him in here in shackles and an orange jumpsuit, and I'm pretty, pro-police, but come on, dude. You're twisting the system, because no jury on earth can look at that and just be like, oh yeah, he might be innocent.
It's just, there's too many other contributing factors, and that the same thoughts are playing into this board of eugenics.
And we'll save that for the next one. Any closing thoughts on this whole kind of rise of eugenics, rise of the Nazi ideology, the meshing? Anything you want to go out on?
Thanks, America, for jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah, we're first there.
Woo! Not proud of that one.
We did get rid of it. We moved on before the Germans, but man,
Definitely.
we set the table for them.
Yeah.
Not our proudest moment. One of the nice things about America is we tend to overcome some of this stuff, but there's 100 other medical things America's done that weren't right at all. We'll save that for future episodes too. So for now, goodbye from the dark side.